Okay, welcome everyone to Hello? Is that working? Yeah. Okay, welcome everybody to the meeting of the Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We'll start off with any apologies for absence. So have we received any apologies?
Yeah, we had apologies from Shona Turtle, and she's been substituted by Alison, who's joining us online.
Thank you. So then on to next item, minutes of the previous meeting. Does anyone have any comments or any amendments that they wish to note on the minutes from the previous meeting? No. So we'll take that to a vote. Would anyone like to all those in favour of the minutes? Any against? You are, yeah, I think you were online. Is that yeah?
Double check. Double check. I'll double check.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
online.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll add that in. Okay. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so those minutes are approved. So next item, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? Okay, and then moving on to agenda item 23, public question time. So we've had 2 questions submitted. I don't believe they're present, but I will read the questions and the answers, and we'll submit written responses as well. So the first question was from Amit Mehta. The question is, what criteria does Children's Social Services team apply to first contact referrals before deciding to proceed with the MASH checks? Multi-agency safeguarding hub MASH checks are requests to other agencies for information in respect of a child. These are undertaken when the manager has insufficient detail to make an informed decision about the kind of support to be offered to the child and their family. The different decision that can be made on conclusion of the checks include the offer of support from targeted early help service, an assessment of the child's needs with view to provision of support under a child in need or child protection plan, or whether the child's needs are met via universal services, so no further action is required. So we will provide a written response with that as well. The second question is what avenues does a complainant have specifically against the independent reviewer within Children's Social Services Stage 3 panel, who is supposedly an unbiased reviewer, however may not be acting as independent or unbiased? And the answer is, for reference, this question refers to complaints and representations about children's social care services made under the Children's Act 1989 Representations England regulations, and in accordance with the statutory guidance which outlines the process by which they should be considered. The document Getting the Best from Complaints, Social Care Complaints and Representations for Children, Young People and Others. Stage 3 of the aforementioned process involves the appointment of 3 independent professionals to make up a panel, formed of 1 chair and 2 supporting panelists. The purpose of Stage 3 panels is to consider the adequacy of the investigations at the preceding stages of the complaints process, obtain any further information, advice that may help resolve the complaints, to reach findings on each of the complaints being reviewed, and, where required, to make recommendations that provide practical remedies and solutions to those issues raised. In appointing the panel, the Council will refer to a schedule of independent professionals to identify those who are suitably qualified, make contact to confirm availability, and then formally appoint them to posts. It should be noted that all individuals appointed to act on panels are independent of the Council, meaning they are neither a member nor an officer, nor the spouse or civil partner of such person. Should a complainant have concerns about any of the members of the panel, have displayed bias or acted unfairly through the course of the Stage 3 panel, they can escalate their concerns via the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman. The LGSCO are an independent organisation who are essentially the final stage in the complaints process. They assess and investigate individual complaints about local authorities, adult social care providers, and other public service organisations. Details on how to get in touch with the LGSCO can be accessed via the link which will be provided in the written response. So thank you for those questions. We'll now move on to the next item, which is member question time. I don't believe there are any questions from members, are there? So we will move on to item 25, which is the annual SEND survey and the multi-agency response. So yes, over to you, Emma. I think let's start.
Sorry, so thank you, Chair. So introducing the annual SEND Voices survey, which is an annual event seeking the views of children, young people and parents and carers of children with additional needs. This was the response to the 2024 survey, which was opened on the 17th of June and closed on the 26th of July. In terms of our analysis of the issues, we will hear a presentation from our SEND Voices colleagues presenting an overview of the survey's findings. But just to stress that the survey findings are welcomed by all agencies from across the partnership, and providing a really valuable opportunity to receive feedback and insights, and this will help inform us to help shape and modify our services in the forthcoming months and across the year. I think it's fair to say that we know that we have more to do to support our children and young people to achieve their best outcomes and have positive educational experiences. The survey is incredibly valuable to us in terms of helping us focus on that activity. We will be providing a formal response, which the partnership is currently reviewing, and will be provided at the January overview and scrutiny meeting in 2025. But I'd like to hand over to Terry and Sarah to provide the overview and present the survey's findings.
Thank you very much for having us along. So as Emma said, yes, this is the third time we've run our annual survey, and I know Andrew asked for a little bit of background about SEND Voices and who SEND Voices were, because I'm not sure that everybody in the room knows who we are and what we do. So we're the independent parent carer forum for the borough, and every local authority has a parent carer forum, and our role is to act as a collective voice and represent all the parents and carers of children who have special educational needs or disabilities aged 0 to 25. So we act as a critical friend, working with the LA Health and Social Care to look at improving SEND services in the borough. And we do this in various ways. We hold training courses, we hold events like our Local Offer Live Day. And one of the things we do to make sure we collect information is our annual SEND survey. So this year, as Emma mentioned, it ran from the 17th of June to the 26th of July, slightly shorter time than we normally do, about 50% less. And as a result, we didn't get quite as many responses as we had done previously, although I think we were still quite pleased to get 294 responses. There was also some sort of clash with the SEND and inclusion strategy and autism strategies that were being consulted on at the same time, and it also ran into the end of term, which is not a great time for families with SEND. So that's why we had slightly lower results, but we do try and share it as widely as we can through as many different avenues, through schools, through the CAN network, through the Local Offer newsletter, via social media, through other voluntary charity organisations that support families with SEND. So we try and get it out there to as many people as possible. And it's not just for those children that have EHC plans. It's for, you know, families who have children with any special educational need or disability. So we were pleased that when we got the results, they were fairly much in line with the demographics of Wokingham. And this year we did have a slightly higher response rate from families who are currently members of Send Voices Wokingham. And I think that just highlights the fact that the survey went out later, hit the end of the school year, and it didn't go out through as many schools as we would have hoped. So as part of the survey, we ask for an overall rating of SEND services in the borough. And this is, as I said, with the third year we've run it. And this year we did see a drop in the rating, which was sort of quite significant, with 45% of the respondents rating it as extremely poor or poor in terms of SEND services in the borough. So we also looked, though, and I think it's important to say we look at what's going well as what's not going so well. And these are some of the highlights that families told us were going well in 2024. So services like CSO&S, Assist and the Short Breaks team, Portage were all, sorry, is it very small? Do you want me to try and make it a little bit bigger? Probably I'll cut some of the slide off. Is that better? Yeah, services, sorry, such as CSO&S and Assist and the Short Breaks team and Portage, families felt very supported by them. And so the schools like Addington School, there were lots and lots of positive responses about Addington School. Families welcome the support they get from charities, and some of the services like ADHD diagnosis, when you actually get through the waiting list, were reported as improving, as so were GP 14+ health checks and wheelchair services. There was improvement seen in the preparing for adulthood and also first teams. And it was good to see that there was increased awareness of the local offer website. But there were a number of areas that were, sorry, it's a bit slow catching up with my screen. There we go.
You have to make it larger again, I think.
Okay. So what do parents tell us that were the areas that improvements could be made? I think one of the key area was SEND team communications, and that's been a theme that's come across for well over a year now. And I know that there are plans in place to look at that and improve it, but that came out very strongly as an area that needed improvement. And also areas such as schools making ordinarily available and reasonable adjustments. There's not enough staff, there's not enough resources in schools, and they just don't make those ordinary changes that children need to be able to access education. You know, we hear frequently about parents having letters from medical consultants saying children don't need to wear certain parts of their school uniform, yet the school still insist that the child has to wear their blazer. On the other hand, you hear from other schools where they'll do whatever they can to, you know, they can wear shoes that have got Velcro on, they can wear T-shirts instead of shirts so that the buttons don't annoy. So it can be done, but there are a lot of families that report that schools just do not make reasonable adjustments. There's lots of school children either on part-time timetables or out of school, and waiting times for everything are too long. Not just health service, but health services in particular did get mentioned, but parents just feel that they're continually on a waiting list for something. They'd like to see an improvement in the identification of needs by social care, and they would like more information. There is more awareness of the local offer now, but parents still find it incredibly hard to find any information on the local offer because the navigation through it is so hard. They don't know where to go to start looking for information. And most families will tell you that they pick more information up from other families than they do from services being able to direct them in the right direction. They'd like services to work more closely together so that they don't have to tell their story again and again and again. And one of the other big themes that came up is mental health. And I think that's also been fed back through schools and things like that. There's just not enough mental health services for the young people, and there's lots that are falling through gaps. So they're too complex for school, but then they're not complex enough for CAMS Tier 4, and then they end up sitting in this pot in the middle, and there's no one that can help and support them. And those then tend to be the youngsters that end up sort of on part-time timetables or missing school or being EBSA. Families are saying that still provisions that are written in the HCPs are not being delivered by schools, and the annual review process needs improvement. And we'd say that's particularly within the mainstream cohort. Schools like Addington do a fantastic job, and it's sort of their bread and butter, and they're doing annual reviews all the time and know what they're doing. Whereas in the mainstream, because there aren't so many children with the HCPs, there obviously aren't so many children going through the annual review process, so therefore the schools aren't so familiar with the process, and it's not as good and robust for those children. Parents would like improved communication of the support that's available, and particularly the children with disabilities team. A lot of families didn't know about a lot of the services within there. Although they rated that the short breaks team themselves were good and very, very helpful, there is a lack of the actual short breaks that they can access. So I think there was a lot of feedback about giving me a direct payment. Money on a card is no use when I can't, there's nothing to spend the money on to provide me with a short break. As I mentioned before, health waiting lists, especially CAMS, autism, ADHD, occupational therapy and speech and language were raised as sort of concerns, and parents would like improved transport communication and are particularly still concerned about the training that goes on for taxi drivers and escorts. That comes up year after year after year, and I know it recently came up in our parents meeting that we have with families as well. There's still a lot of concern about that. My screen's taking, is it going to catch up? Oh, there we go, slowly, very slowly. So what we did, just to try and delve into things a little bit more, we pulled out some of the results and compared the results for those who have children in mainstream versus those that have children in special schools. And as you can see, the ratings that came from the families who have children in special schools are much higher. So where there was the setting well resourced to meet their child's needs was much higher for those in special schools for those than those in mainstream. And that was a trend across all areas. And then, sorry, this went to the SEND Assurance Board and also the SEND Partnership. And what we also do is we do a termly feedback from families, and this was some of the themes that came back from the summer term, which sort of just echoed what we were seeing in the survey. But the full survey is available online, and we'll make sure that the link is available to go out with the minutes. But it is a long survey. It's about 200 odd pages, the report. There's loads and loads of comments from families in it about their actual individual experience, and the survey itself covers the whole range of SEND services. So it's not just education, it's education, health, social care, transport, information for families, how parent carers are feeling, transport, it covers everything. So it's the whole of SEND across the Wokingham area. So if anybody's got any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much for that report and for all the work with the survey. So yes, Charles, do you want to start?
Thank you. I was going to ask, maybe for you, maybe for Emma, maybe for both. I realise obviously SEND is a national problem, and there are a lot of structural things that can't be fixed here with this. I note the decline in satisfaction from last year. Is there any way of measuring how good, bad, or how well placed Wokingham is nationally against other councils?
I don't know. No, I mean, it depends what criteria
Yeah.
you want to use. So if you look at your educational healthcare plan timeliness, it peaks and troughs. So Woking is quite good at the minute against its partners. But that comes as a trend depending on your SEND case officers, and of course that will then reflect in how parents feedback. So I would say one of your SEND team is one of your biggest criteria, and I would say yes, that's a national issue.
Yeah, Charles, yeah. Oh, sorry, did you want to come back to this? But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just to so the area SEND inspections have were introduced 2022.
Everything inspection.
Yeah.
The new which is
Yeah.
new arrangement 2022. Yeah.
Yes.
That's the old one. Yeah.
So that is providing a degree of benchmarking in terms of against particular standards, but as an area, Wokingham recently was, how to describe it, discharged from having its accelerated improvement planning notice that followed the written statement of action. So that happened earlier this year in terms of progress that had been made, and we have yet to receive our area SEND inspection in terms of achieving that judgment. I think when Wokingham more broadly is looked at in terms of educational outcomes, actually those fare more positively than in other areas. But I think what we acknowledge is that actually that shouldn't get away from understanding individual children and families' experiences, and that we know that there's more that we need to do as a local area. And that isn't just about, as Terry and Sarah said, that's not just the local authority, that's about the whole system in terms of how it's working, including education, health, community and voluntary partners as well. So yes.
Am I able to add something?
Oh, yeah, sorry, Prudence.
So I think I'd be interested in Terry and Sarah's view of this. I think at the moment we are now at the point of maximum turbulence, probably. It may still get a bit worse. We're making a lot of changes. We're trying to not sort out, that's the wrong word, trying to put in place a better response to we've got a lot of work streams going on. We're reconfiguring part of the SEND team. We've got more support and management things in there. We've got participation officers coming, and we've got all sorts of things going on. But it's not quick enough to get through the system. So it's coming, but we're not there yet. And so parents can't see a lot of that. And one of the casualties of that is the communication is no better than it was. I mean, and I think there are bits of it that are slightly better, but this team are not focused on the communication. They're focused on the changes. And I think that the communication for me is the issue. It's one of the most difficult. It sounds simple to get it right. It's really quite difficult. The amount of effort it takes. Steps are being taken, but we're not seeing the benefit of it. It's just as in the overall spend, we've done a lot of work, but it's not affecting the end product quite in the same way yet. So we will wait and see. We'll wait and see what it's a whole system response that's coming in January, because it isn't just us. It's health and schools and whatever as well. Everybody needs to get involved in that. I think we've still got a bit of work to do on making it a whole system as well. We're getting there with that. There's a bit more partnership, but not quite there yet. But I don't know whether it'll be there in time for next year's survey. I'm hopeful, but the overall picture for SEND is not good nationally. So there are increasing pressures as well as stuff going the other way to push it up, there's stuff coming the other way that pushes it down. So it's a struggle, and you know, I wouldn't try and claim anything else, but what I would say, a bit more positive perhaps than Sarah on the EHCPs, we are somewhere around the national average consistently. Sometimes we're a bit better, sometimes we're a bit under. There are local authorities that do this, and I know of one which I will name because it's been named to me and I know it's right. Essex, they do 1% of theirs in the 20 weeks. And we're on somewhere around 57 at the moment, 57%, aren't we? Might be a bit more, a bit less, but it's somewhere around there. It went up to 60 something earlier this year, but the latest I've seen is about 57%. So we're doing better than that. So we're not the worst. I'm pretty confident we're not the worst, but we are among the most financially challenged. So.
Yes, Ming, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I think Emma Pro really summarized it really well. Internal, national, standardized output outcomes. We are making great progress. The 20-week timelessness, increased to 68%. National average is about 50%, basically. But Professor is correct. Internal at the practical level. Internal communication, we focus on strategic communication. We develop very good newsletter, local offer newsletter, send out to parents, have over 800 parents signed up to that. But when we talk about communication, we are not quite there yet. It's more about like customer service. When I read the fan surveys, I would like to get back. Someone get back to me tomorrow or something like that. You don't get that feedback sometimes not quick enough. That's what people refer to. Let something work on. Let require capacity and the team effort. We are working on that. It's important, but I think that's the area. But in general, saying I would like that we come a long way. With the great support from the member, your support and challenge, and corporate investment make huge difference here.
Thank you. Do you want to come back to that, Charles?
Thank you. Yeah, just one more for now, then I'll let others have their turn. It was having a son who was diagnosed recently with ADHD 3 months before his A-levels. I've got some experience of this on a personal level. I think the question I was going to ask was, there's obviously a lot of issues here. There's obviously some that can be solved here and some that can't. And I recognise that. But what are the low-hanging fruit, the things that can be solved 6, 12 months, 18 months? What things are measurable that can actually be delivered?
That is a question. That's like asking us how long is a piece of string. So a lot of things have been in the pipeline since, well, for 2 years at least, and they are beginning to come to fruition, but we may not see the output. So the banding system that we're doing for at the moment, we have a not entirely random, but almost random system for allocating the funding to go with the pupil to the school. And it's on very much on an ad hoc basis and always has been, which means we've got an unmanageable number of different arrangements, which is unfair to some schools and too nice to others, and not consistent for the students and not necessarily doing the right thing. And we're bringing in a banding system, but it will take quite a long. It's taken about a year to get agreement on what system we're going to use, which we have got now. The financial implications of that will be presented quite soon to schools, and then we're expecting schools to start arguing because some of them will be disadvantaged by it and others will be much happier because it should be a fairer system. In fact, not should be, it will be a fairer system, but it takes a long time to percolate that through. But there's lots of other things that, in terms of low-hanging fruit, there aren't a lot of low-hanging fruit. They're all quite difficult because things like you'd think that getting schools to agree what was ordinarily available with health and whatever. So no, that's not easy either. We can get some schools to do quite a lot, and some mainstream schools do quite a lot, and most of them are committed to the principle of inclusion and try, but some of them don't. And trying to persuade those, so there will always be problems in some areas which are very difficult to influence. So I think we will never have a perfect system. We can have a better system. All the things are going in the right direction. I think that particularly the education partnership recognises the strides that we've made with the education system. The parents, I hope, they've seen more. For example, the team go and talk to the parents at your sessions, evening sessions that you have, and they're here and not hiding from them. But it's not. We don't have easy answers. I feel that we can't promise, because I think it would be foolhardy. We just don't know what's going to happen nationally, and the National Audit report said, National Audit Office report said, basically the system's financially unsustainable at the moment. So there's an awful lot to worry about, and I'm very reluctant in those circumstances to promise that everything will be lovely, because I don't think it will be. I'm really worried. Sorry, that's very depressing, and that's not a criticism of the staff or the schools or the health system or whatever. It's the shortage of resources in the system hampering the ability to improve. I think that's how I would see it.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think from our point of view, what families would say is if you could get communication right, that is the key fundamental. You know, if someone promises you an email response in 5 days, you should have an email response in 5 days. People are waiting weeks and weeks and weeks and having to chase numerous times before they get a response. And it's getting those basic communication things, because then we know it just escalates. And I'm sure lots of you get things sent in your email boxes to because people are just trying to and they're so desperate to get a response that they'll then, and then it just clogs up everybody's email boxes and makes everybody less efficient.
Can I just and I think I would have a look at the survey as well, because it breaks it down into the different sections, because not everything is doom and gloom. Like your assist team has always been really top. Addington has always been really top and very highly regarded. And in terms of improvements, it's like having Julia's now in place. We have the local area send newsletter that's increased the awareness of the local offer. It's just unfortunate, it's still difficult to navigate. So that's going to be hopefully the next step in improving some of those communications. There are lots of things that I think are in train, but there are still lots of things that I think could be improved a little bit faster, maybe like the complaint system and communication. But again, it goes back to those.
Yeah, do you want to come up with that?
So I would hope to see that with the added investment and the recruitment of experienced teaching staff, which we have been requesting in terms of the SEND team itself, that we have in place teams of practitioners that are skilled and experienced and will focus on the importance of that resident contact and communication. We are working corporately to look at the various different websites and platforms that children and families information is on within Wokingham Borough Council, because there are a number, and I think that's where it gets a little bit confusing. So I'm aware from conversations I had following our conversations that we will be involving our parents and carers in helping understand their journeys and how we navigate that from their point of view. I think that we will have up and running a routine quality assurance process. So in terms of having in place a cycle of continuous improvement and insight into the quality of what's within a child's EHCP plan, and that we will be working with our partners to look at a workforce development strategy as an area, not just within the local authority or say within health, because I think when Terry and Sarah are feeding back around the impact of ordinarily available and the importance of making reasonable adjustments, it's having those conversations, having practitioners within the wider universal offer that can feel that they can deliver that support they can make those decisions, and that will also be part of our helping early strategy. So it's bringing all of these different strands together. So I'm hopeful that that there will be improvements over the forthcoming year as we build the service to what's required. I think it's probably worth noting that there has been, as nationally, a significant growth in the number of EHCPs, and the resource was not matched to be able to counter that. So I think, you know, that's why it historically has been an issue. It has been an issue over this last year. I'm hopeful with the added investment that has been agreed this year that we will see some improvements between this year's and next.
I'm sorry if I sound, before Lynn comes in, I hope, but I feel quite depressed by the state of the challenge in terms of the money that's necessary to cope with the additional demand, but also to improve it. We must, you know, it's a long history of letting children down in this country. So it predates the 2014 legislation. It was the same before when we had statements instead of EHCPs. We still didn't do it properly. And so I feel very reluctant to promise parents that everything will be lovely, because it's such a challenge that we will do what we can when we are making changes. And I do think some of them will come through, but it's hard. And every time you think you've got one thing, something else comes along to derail you, so in a different direction. But I do think we're laying the foundations, and so eventually the things we've laid the foundations for will be built, and they will be better. But it's not a quick fix thing. Honestly, don't think. Sorry, me.
I just want to use one example to back up what Emma just said, things get better. From 2022 to 2023, same as the national trend, we have huge increase in tribunal cases. You talk about 157% increase. And then we pay attention to that. We have better record in place, learn from the tribunal to see what kind of communication we can put into the parent before they go resort to the tribunal. And then, as Emma said, we invest in parent relationship officers role. And this year, we think to continue increase our tribunal. You may read the national newspaper saying that tribunal case, I think it's a long waiting list to be heard. They talk about 2 years. And this year, when I look at the figure, the slight increase to 5%, not 157%. So it means if we put some focused piece of work, we can see the improvement. And I think that's a good example. Although still we would in the ideal world, we don't want to see any tribunal case or result with it. But that's the challenge we have nationally. Locally, I think now our tribunal, although we hear that a lot of tribunal cases get appeal, but actually we are the second lowest in Southeast region. When we look at ourselves, Charles, you asked about how to compare other area, and then when we look at the other area, actually we are the second lowest. It's not complacent. It's just I think everyone has the same challenge. But when we put in great effort, investment, things will improve.
Thank you. Is there any other points from you? I just had one really kind of relating to the response to it, which will come back in January. I think because there's so many things in there, I was just wondering sort of how the structure of that response and what's the kind of approach to that. Are there sort of aspects that you're going to prioritise with it, or are you going to? Yeah, that's.
I think when we come back in January, it would be helpful to invite our statutory partner to be alongside us in terms of that presentation. That would be helpful to include. I think certainly if the main themes that have been extracted that we will present in terms of the breakdown of the particular responses, I think it's fair to say that this, Sarah and Terry mentioned that the surveys went out at the same time as our Send and Inclusion strategy. And so the piece that we are working on is the delivery plan that sits within the Send and Inclusion strategy. So more broadly, we will be including the developments in there, because it's really important that we listen to the feedback, and that then informs what we need to do differently going forward. So so we will provide a formal response to provide an overview for overview and scrutiny, but what I want to assure is that the detail will also be being fed into the delivery plan that sits underneath that broader strategy.
Is that delivery plan the sort of kind of action plan, I guess, which sort of underpins all the sort of specific things which are going to be happening with that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So those will be fed into those things from the feedback will be fed into the delivery plan.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, are there any other questions or comments on any of those? Okay. Great. Thank you very much. So yes, thank you very much for presenting the survey, and yes, we'll look forward to the response with those in our January meeting. So thank you. Thank you. So we'll move on next to the agenda item number 26. I'm just making sure I got that. Yeah, which is the education and send update.
Chair, there will be two parts in this report. The first part talk about general education, how we supposed to, what the education improvement partnership colleagues are doing. The second part will focus on some same topic, or some of them we already discussed. And I will let Gillian to start with Gillian Coles online.
Thank you. Over to you, Gillian.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Lovely to see you. You have the report in front of you. As Ming said, I'm just going to talk through the first element of that, which relates to schools. You've got the information about just the one Ofsted inspection that's been published this term. For the eagle-eyed amongst you may spot that does have an overall judgment in it, although we no longer have overall judgment. That is because the inspection took place before the change that came into place in September, but the report was not published until after September. So the report was from an inspection that took place during the summer term. In terms of the priorities for the education partnership team, you can see those in the report there, and they kind of then run through into some of the examples that I've given you this evening of some of the work that has been underway and is currently underway. I highlight to you the partnership conference that's taking place next Monday, where we have partners from across the education system and health coming together to review and work reflectively around some of the challenges that the system faces and how we can work productively together to support the most vulnerable, picking up the theme from the Marmot review around those who might be lost in the average. And then this time last year, I did report to committee about the racial equity programme and give you a sense of the composition of the pupil population that we serve as a community locally. And I've just popped some information into the report there, just so that you understand that currently 41% of our pupil population are from a non-white background, so come from a Black, Asian or global majority background, and that we have currently 150 15 languages spoken in the borough, by approximately a quarter of that pupil population. So I'll pause there, colleagues, and take any questions that you have.
Anyone have any questions or comments on those so far? No, that's fine. Thank you very much for that. That's great. So should we move on to the send portion then? Ming? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, same really. Last time we were asked to have more focus report on tribunal case. As I already mentioned, I think year on year nationally, there's a big increase in tribunals. As you know, tribunal case once go to the tribunal, mostly local authority will lose the cases. I think the national picture, and we, in the past 2 years, I think particularly 1 year out in the past, we have a better recording our tribunal case to see what kind of issues being identified, why parents chose to go down that route. Is there any opportunity at early stage? Actually, we can manage it better. We do not need to result in tribunal cases. And as I said earlier, last year, 2023, we have 157 increase our cases. One of the things I would like to say that at the same time, our overall same cover group also grow. We have 225 more, 250 more EHCP children, young people. So that percentage-wise, you need to take that into account. And I just mentioned about parent relationship manager putting great effort to try to seek any early opportunity to discuss with the parent. Our head of SEND, and also now we have SENCO coordinator liaise with the school coordinator SENCOs to do anything. Sometimes it's complaint is not about just local authorities saying things, it's about health, about school. So let the kind of partnership really lead to what I just said now, and rest of huge year-on-year increase of tribunal. So far this year we have 76 appeal. Last year we have 90. With the remaining month left, I think wouldn't go beyond that much more than last year. In the context of national challenge, I think it's quite something we have achieved. It's only about 5% increase. You talk about last year and year before, it's over 1% increase. That's a big improvement, but still a long way to go. Like I said, I wouldn't want to see over 90 tribunal. Ideally, should be how? Should be no tribunal. We can resolve it by mitigation, by working out a solution with the parent at early stage. Okay. And because of that, what we are now doing now, we work the two departments, same service, my same service, and performance team, which is look out the data, information, etc. Set up a Power BI to better monitor, track the cases that likely going to tribunal, or the one already gone to tribunal, what kind of thing we need to learn. More work need to be done, but I think we are on the right track. I would like to say that. I just leave for you any question you'd like to ask. I don't want to repeat what I just said earlier.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you. First of all, can I absolutely commend you on your aim to try and get down to no tribunals? I think that's exactly right and to be supported wholly. I was going to ask actually something else that you mentioned it briefly, the what next section in here, such as studying tribunal outcomes. When do you think, what kind of timeline are we looking at on that?
Yeah, that's why I linked what we said earlier. the team already put in the system. We have actual capacity now, parent liaison officer, relationship officer. And also we work with joint legal service charity to see what kind of thing actually you do not need to go to legal service. We can embed it in the same case working. So we just mentioned same case working at the moment is the team area. We are short out capacity. We have investment. We recruiting more people. Some people already coming. To answer your question, I can't give you definitely the timeline, but I think it give us another 6 months. You can see, I think, a market improvement in this area, and we can tell you exactly what kind of thing we need to do, what kind of thing we need to tackle earlier. The team is just not in full complement at the moment. I just want to be transparent at the moment, although there's a strong commitment of investment in the team. To get the right people in, not always easy. You may recruit people in, and then after 3 months, let another authority pay more. They just go to another authority. So we want to make sure we get people hopefully locally. They want to come here, they want to stay on, they committed to working on. So that's the team we are building. So give us, I think, at least 6 months time, we can make it better.
Briefly, wholly agree with all of that. When you said 6 months, I was quite pleased, because when you started talking about recruiting people, I thought he's going to say at least 12. By the time we've hired them, they're trained and bedded in.
We
so
started already, yeah.
Fully support that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I was just ask as well. I mean, I know you touched upon this a little bit, but in terms of the actions to avoid getting to that tribunal stage, I think you talked about the sort of mediation, which I think is the stage before. Is it about trying to either improve that mediation stage or trying to avoid it even getting to the mediation stage, I guess, with that kind of early intervention?
Yeah, we want to embed it more into our case working capacity. So we have designed some posts, the senior case working posts, who have a capacity and who are trained. It's not easy job, the trained to embed this mitigation instead of taking out mitigation as a separate piece of work. That in your case working, actually, you start have some more senior people, more experienced people who can deal with more complex case, can deal with the people, parent probably more anxious because of that more, well, I think more they want to get things done more eagerly. So for main grade sort of case worker, because they have so many cases they need to deal with. So we now have designed senior case worker who have capacity to embed the mitigation into our practice. So that.
Thank you. Yes, Sarah.
I know tribunals are a bit of a complex system, so I know that we're working on the communication on an individual level with the SEND team, as well as looking at some place planning. But even when we've got the full complement of the SEND team, the provision isn't still going to be where we want it to be. So I'm wondering, what sort of impact do you think it is around the difference between sometimes it's just poor communication and things have got frustrated and people are at loggerheads, and sometimes it's just around the fact that they can't find a placement for their child. So even if you have a full complement SEND team, how much impact do you think that's going to really have on tribunals?
Yeah,
in terms of placements.
Yeah, I think that's linked to what I said earlier. It's about our understanding of tribunal cases. That's why we want to build a Power BI to analyze cases. What are the elements within our control? What are elements like someone have a specific need, have to find a specific school that we just couldn't at this stage of at the moment we just can't find such a school. The parent want to push for that. I think you don't blame them, but that kind of some factor can be beyond our control. So we like communication definitely one of the factor will have huge impact on whether leading to tribunal or not.
I think this links to the broader quality assurance piece, because essentially it is about what we are learning about our commissioning decisions, as well, in terms of particular children's needs, particular complexities that perhaps haven't been responded to early enough, which are characterise tribunals. So in terms of learning from those individual children and families' experiences and their journeys, what could we have done differently? What maybe we need to think about developing in the system? I think it's probably fair to say that in terms of that strategic planning place for additional school places, more specialist school places, that typically, when you're looking at broader school planning, and we now have planning for children with additional needs within that area of our service, typically you're talking on a 3 to 5 year time scale. But it's really important that we're able to have those effective systems in place to understand what can we respond to more quickly, and what do we need to be planning for in the longer term, because the needs of our children, when we properly understand what those needs are and the level of those needs, which is why the banding review will be really helpful in terms of some of the categories that will help us with those broader commissioning decisions about getting the provision in place. Because it's not, you're right, it's not all about communication. Often it's about maybe a disagreement or the inability to be able to meet that particular need in the timescales with which the parent is wanting that to happen.
Can I add something? So recently I have talked to a parent who went to a tribunal some years ago and to talk about her experiences of why did it happen. And one of the things that I think that we haven't mentioned, because all the things that have been talked about are reasons why what you need to be looking for. Entrenched positions is one of them. So going down the letter of the law or the letter of the legislation, as it were, and not thinking about, well, actually, if we just flexed a little bit in this direction, which is perfectly within our power to do, we could avoid all that, and not thinking about a small change here, which might cost you, I don't know, in this case, I think it was about £500 it would have cost us. We could avoid ending up over there where it's costing us thousands of pounds and delaying everything. So having that mindset, which I think we have got now, that's what we're aiming to do, is to make sensible decisions, not letter of the law decisions and clinging to that kind of thing. And because I don't think that's helpful to anybody. It just makes antagonism. It is difficult without having sorted out all the communication. The communication stuff does need sorting out, but and some parents will never. We will always have some tribunals, I think, because some parents will not agree with the decision of the local authority or what provision is. And you're always going to have some people like that because it's inevitable. But to try and minimise it as much as possible and to try and be sensible and think about what you're doing instead of getting on those tram lines and ending up somewhere where you really don't need to be.
Just going to ask as well, I'll come to that. I mean, I know you sort of, do you have any idea about the sort of like financial implications of like when it moves to sort of tribunal and or even further, sort of how much that sort of costs on each case in terms of going through that process, or is it a bit open-ended?
It's expensive is what I would say, and yes. I think it also it's not just the financial cost, it's also the human cost in terms of the stress that gathers in terms of an adversarial service and position in terms of trying to resolve something for a child. So it's not a position that certainly as a local authority that we take lightly, but it as with all sort of legal proceedings, it can get very, very expensive. and that is money that could be going into provision for children. So so it's trying to see it as a broader system, which is why you know, we are keen to seek resolution at the earliest opportunity, really, for children.
You're so much better at phrasing this than me.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was wondering as well. I mean, I think that sort of the data and the update with the tribunals, I think, is really helpful. I think, and I wonder whether that sort of thing, it could form one of the kind of regular sort of dashboard items which could be on there in terms of being able to sort of track whether those trends are changing and things like that. Is that something that might be possible in terms of having that on the send update as a sort of new dashboard item?
Yes, certainly. And I think as we progress in terms of that improved quantitative overview, what I would be hopeful is that we can then bring the qualitative understanding in terms of some of the themes, whilst not going into individual details. But that would be very helpful, I think, for us, for you know, you to be cited on and reviewing.
Yeah, that'd be great. I suspect. Well, I don't know. I suspect it's a sort of virtuous circle of if you get those things down, then there's sort of more. Well, I say more money as well, and sort of hopefully people are happy with the services as well with those.
I think it's something good for member to have good oversight and to scrutinize all. Yeah.
Excellent. So yes, maybe if we could add that as a recommendation to add that on there. Does anyone else have any questions or comments on any of those bits? I just had one bit. It was a little bit earlier on page 27, where it was mentioning the post 16 hub, I think, in town on that bit. I was just wondering sort of what time do we know a sort of time scale of when that might be provided? Is that sort of a very much future plan, or is that a sort of hopefully soon sort of thing?
Go
on. We are hopeful that we will be able to deliver that and are working towards a 2026 start.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on either any of those bits or any of the dashboard items as well? Did you want to go through? Did you want to introduce any of the dashboard items at all, or?
Yeah, I think yeah, I can highlight. I assume member all read the dashboard. The area I want to highlight really internal EHCP children with education care and healthcare plan. The number in Vara in this quarter dropped slightly, but our placement increased slightly. Yeah, increased and more played out Vara. Our Vara actually more expensive normally. And in the 20 week, we already said that we make great effort to improve 20 weeks assessment timeliness. Nationally, it's about 50%. Now we reach about 64%. I think when we look at whole year's average, it's about 63, 64. So we are much better than national average. But I wouldn't say that we are complacent about that. I think everyone entitled to have timely assessment. Sorry, I think member Jen, you want to have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just interested, Ming, in what's driving that increased number, because it's 10% higher than the start of the year and significantly higher than last year.
Yeah. You mean the EHCP time?
Sorry, I should have asked earlier. The placements out of Borough.
Yeah.
What's driving that?
We in spring term we have working another to have a surge of actual request for EHCP to over 70 cases. It cannot although it emerged in late springtime, but it cannot process all them, assess them in springtime. So they have a knock-on effect on Q2. So there's an increase in springtime, our request for ESCP, because you have more requests, more placement needed. So that we think it's one-off surge. There's a steady increase. For that scale of big increase, it just one reason another, just one period of sudden surge of over 70 cases.
So would you expect that to drop next quarter then?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on this? I just had a quick one on dashboard 2 on the children missing in education. It was just on this sort of reducing exclusion as a kind of priority. It was just wondering whether is this a priority for particularly for students with SEND or as an overall priority? And partly the second bit are there many students that we know who are excluded which don't have SEND, or is it overwhelmingly where there are exclusions that there are SEND with that?
Yeah, I think same a national pattern. Children who are vulnerable more likely to be suspended or excluded. We are part of that trend. But later, I would like to say that although we do have exclusion, 27, the quarter before this quarter, we don't have a permanent exclusion. But before that, we have 27 in 12 months probably. But when I look at our 71 school, most school for 5 years, I can only track 5 years, they never permanent exclude to any school. So that means there's a high concentration of permanent exclusion in 2 or 3 schools. So I think probably our school from one colleague, other colleague already picked it up. So to be fair to school, most school, they don't permanently exclude. It's just a few schools. So I'd like to point out in the past when we talk about exclusion as if everyone permanently excluded, actually not. Some schools, most schools are really, really inclusive in working on. They never permanently excluded. So that's something probably in terms of focus to answer your question. We want to focus those few schools to look at whether the leadership system, whether anything particularly in the system we need to support. One example, one particular school, we put together a team around school to support, to target that school, although it's not local authority maintained school, it's an academy. We think that those children come from our area, part of our community. We need to support it. So we need to have more focused support instead of talking about exclusion in general. Most schools are very good.
Thank you. And I was, yeah, sorry. Do you want to? I'll just quickly go again. I was does that include as well when we talk about those? Does the local authority get involved with maybe whether it's earlier intervention on sort of students who are at risk of permanent exclusion, but maybe finding alternative provision, whether it is in a different setting or support within the school? Because I guess there's some times where possibly that it's decided that setting might not be the best place, but not want to go down the full route of exclusion.
Let's spot on question, Chair. I think it is very important when we talk to school to say that, well, it can't just say we don't like permanent exclusion, you don't permanent exclude. So one thing you need to offer, what good alternative to permanent exclusion? Some young people probably from school point of view need to be permanently excluded. Do you have an alternative, not just alternative, good alternative to permanent exclusion? Do we have a support for the timeout in pupil referral unit or AP when they're ready to go back to school? So we just had a discussion, we want to set up that mechanism. And also we want school to notify us before they make that decision. Maybe something local authority can do to help school. So that system not in place at the moment. So we just have a conversation with school leaders that before you permanent exclusion, make a permanent exclusion decision, notify local authority designated person will come to school to talk to you. And the third thing we're doing is we look at suspension, odd days of suspension. Someone may have the city head cover, they get a half-day exclusion or today. We want to monitor what we call the repeated exclusion. If someone, you look back 12 months, they've been excluded 3 times or more, something must be wrong. Either something in school or child emotional need or something at home. So we want to collect this data. They're all in the making at the moment. We are working on this at the moment. Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah.
Yeah, Emily, do you want to?
Yeah, just to add, our Youth Justice Service have an exclusions prevention programme. So working with children who might be at risk in terms of offending. So working as a partnership at early help levels to support kind of preventing escalation. So yeah, so just to reiterate that there is a partnership that comes together to seek to prevent exclusions.
Thank you. Did you want to comment on that, Sarah?
Thank you. I mean, it's just a bit of an extension question. It's really nice to hear that you're monitoring it all, especially the short-term exclusions across a child's life in school. But do you look at the managed moves as well? So, are these children staying within the same school, or are they just being moved around the borough in terms of, so you're also tracking that as well, just because that's often the alternative to excluding a child?
We do have management move data, but as you know, management move is a voluntary arrangement. It's not statutory arrangement between head teacher. When one head teacher struggle dealing with one people, they ask another head teacher, actually, can I try a placement in your school to see how to work or not? That kind of management move. So it's because of this arrangement between head teacher. At the moment, we are focusing more on the statutory arrangement, fair asset panel, the difficult to place people, and we coordinate. We have independent chair dealing with that. But we do monitor information to answer your question.
Yeah, Chris.
Sorry, just to follow up on that, because we said that the exclusions are sort of linked to a small number of schools, it would seem to make sense that managed moves away from those areas would help reduce those exclusions. Does that sound logical?
Yeah, quite interesting. There's some national voluntary research. It depends how you deal with management move. Some areas find it extremely successful. They coordinate by people refer unit AP. Like I remember London Borough Sutton, or they manage really well. Then in other area, they use match move, just moving children around. Actually, it doesn't help children. They just move around more till they come back to the old problem. It's depending on how you coordinate that with a clear purpose. I think I read the report on Sutton, London Borough Sutton one is they have very clear purpose. What you really try have some try place in your place. What target you need to be achieved? You're successful. What kind of group practice I can take back to my school instead of you're doing really, really well and then come back and then go back to old behavior. So I think how to manage it is make huge difference.
Thank you. I was just going to one very quick final thing. It was just about the exclusion data and things like that, which said academies and things contribute to. Is it statutory for all academies to sort of give you that data, or is it on a kind of voluntary basis in terms of the exclusion data and things?
It's not statutory. It have to be voluntary. I think school would normally happy to do that because I would think they would like to have help.
So there's a generally sort of quite good sort of rate of being academy sort of help, giving that information.
Sorry,
there's generally a good rate of academy sort of giving that.
Oh yeah, they're not.
You don't have any problems with that.
They're not good. I think here although we said academy, a local authority school like division, that division actually not there, because we look at the line from all the children are our children's. Doesn't matter your academy, private school, or local maintained school, their well-being, their achievement, we all have a great interest in. So they understand that. I mean.
Thank you. Melanie.
Just regarding the managed move, I used to work at a school in Reading, so it fell under the Reading Council. Because of the issues that they had there was a lot of managed moves, but not all of them worked. So if the one pupil came back to the school, would the other pupil in that school have to go back to their school, or does it just sort of go round in a circle?
Yeah, I think it's all local arrangement. Yeah. Some local area have that kind of deal that I take 2 people from your school within 1 academic year period, even if you take 2 from my school. Then well, not all area have that arrangement. I think the good thing really is to identify good practice to learn from each other, not just moving children around. Yeah, let's have some good research that you just move children around instead of identify good alternative practice. It wouldn't help children. It just makes things worse. Children are being moved around too much. I think let's study or indicate children stayed with less move, the better. You don't know longer. Yeah.
Yeah, Prue.
Contribute to this one because as in my many years as school governor, I was responsible for exclusions, chairing the exclusion panels, whatever. And managed moves, it depends why you're doing the managed move. And I think schools that use it to try and just prevent an exclusion and don't actually have a reason for why it might work for that child are not going to succeed. So things that succeed, in my view, are things like where the child was with the wrong peer group in the school and you take the child away from that peer group into a different school and they flourish, and that works. But if actually what you're trying to do is this child, we don't know what to do with them, they're heading for a permanent exclusion, we can't put anything in place, we're just trying to give them to somebody else to be their problem, doesn't work, and they invariably come back to your school after 6 weeks and continue on the same path. So it does vary in intensity. And also I think we're fortunate in Woking that most schools cooperate with each other and do this sensibly, but there have been times in the past where one school will try and palm another student off on another school without properly informing them of what they're getting. Doesn't help anybody, at least of all the child, but it doesn't help the school that's receiving it or the school that sent them, because then it creates bad faith between them and it's more difficult to do a managed move next time. So I think managed moves can work, but they don't always work. And sadly, some children actually benefit from going to the pupil referral unit and getting sort of reset, as it were, going out again, and that's good.
That in June of this year, we what Prue's right. What it really matters is about the support to that child and that school setting. So in June of this year, we implemented a multi-agency inclusion clinic, and that has been very successful in pulling professionals, multidisciplinary professionals together from across the system to help problem solve and make sure that children are receiving the support that they require. And I think from early indications, we look like there's approximately 20 children who've gone back into school, some who have been out of school for a significant period of time. So that's also something that we have implemented more recently in terms of seeking to make sure that children have access to the right support at the right time.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on those items? Okay. So I think our recommendation is to note that, and to if we can add the tribunal as a dashboard item for the next updates with that. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which is, oh, sorry, my computer's updating itself. It's the early help and social care update. So, yeah. Oh, Adam. Yeah. Thank you.
Evening. Good evening. So I've shared with the board the report, the early health and social care update. The report is broken down into two components. One is an overview of the ILACs, the inspection of local authority children's services. And the other part of the report is the summary of key performance indicators. So I'm just going to go through a few of the sort of headlines really from the ILACs, the part on the Ofsted inspection process and the inspection, and then there's opportunity for questions in relation to the key performance indicators. So just to start with an overview, so the inspection of local authority children's services is known as ILACs. That's and they are undertaken by Ofsted. The ILACs framework is designed to evaluate the experiences of children and young people who receive services from children's social care. A local authority will receive a full ILACs inspection once every 3 years. And there was some change to that over the COVID period, but that's the target time frame, plus or minus 6 months. In between these inspections, a local authority can also expect a focused visit once a year, an inspection, and that will focus on a particular area of delivery or service. And the local authority could also receive a joint area thematic inspection. On an annual basis, we share with Ofsted a self-evaluation of social work practice. That's a document, and this is followed by an annual engagement meeting where we meet in person with Ofsted. Wokingham's last full ILACs inspection was in March 2023, where the authority was judged as requires improvement, also known as RI. Our next full inspection is most likely to land in the spring of 2026, but again, that's plus or minus 6 months. Our last focus visit took place in February 2024, which looked at the experience of children in need and children subject to child protection plans. And we are unlikely to receive any further social care inspection activity until spring 2025. And that, of course, doesn't include other areas of us that are inspected. So our children with disability, respite provision, bridges is inspected on an annual basis. Our youth justice is inspected by the HMIP. And we're also opening our new children's homes, which you'll be aware of, which will be due an inspection as part of their opening process. So just to look at the last ILAC, the main recommendations of the March 2023 ILACs, and they focused on assessments and improving the timelines of our assessments of children in need. The recommendations focused on planning, and that was improving the quality and clarity and timelines of child in need and child protection and pathway plans. It focused on supervision and management oversight, improving the quality and impact of frontline supervision and management oversight at all levels. It focused on recording, improving the timeline, timeliness and accuracy and accessibility of children's records. And it focused on exploitation, improving our response to children who are vulnerable to exploitation. And also during the inspection process, we identified additional themes that came up in a number of the meetings that we had with Ofsted. And this was around neglect, and that was improving the outcomes for children and young people who experience neglect, who despite our long-term involvement have not seen their situations improve, and care leavers, ensuring that consistency and quality in all levels of support provided to care leavers across all areas of our work. Now, the report that you've had before you goes into detail about the plan, the improvement plan that was in place, and how we monitored the impact and outcomes of that improvement plan. So is there any questions in relation to that part of the social care update report?
Thank you. Jane.
Mine was less of a question and more of an observation. Just to say requires improvement is incredibly emotive and I'm sure a stressful environment to work in. And I just wanted to say it was really reassuring to read that plan and all the work that's been undertaken. So thanks for that.
Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you. Charles.
Thank you. Yeah, I note the plan. I note the positive steps that are being done in all areas. There is actually an action plan going forwards. And I recognise the work that's gone into that. I think my question was in a couple of areas. It appears we're still some distance away from the actual standard basically to achieve good. Correct me if I'm wrong, basically, but we're 6 months away. So I'd welcome your comments. I think there's one area, where is it? 34% is outstanding or good. Another one is 41 or 42. And I'd welcome your comments about where you think, if we continue on this trajectory, we might be by spring, summer next year.
Just a point now, I would say we're expecting our next ILACs to be 2026. And if I recall the report you're making reference to in there is the outcome of our audits. And that's where we do an ongoing audit process, and then we look at those audits and we judge them against what we feel where they land. So that's an ongoing process that we are keeping doing in terms of generating through generating new audits and re-auditing cases. I would also say that a lot of our work, so whilst we have an improvement plan that focuses on the areas that Ofsted highlight, we also broaden that and focus on other areas that we're aware that come apparent through feedback, complaints, audits as well. So it's a very dynamic process in terms of that area of improvement, because obviously over that 3-year period when Ofsted come back, they'll be keen to know what work you've done in relation to areas identified before, but they will also be looking at all aspects of your work as they do in their inspection process. So that's why it's important that we're always self-evaluating and assuring ourselves through audit and process and looking at areas of development improvement.
Thank you. Yeah, Charles, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you for that. So just to drill into that a bit further, supervision and management oversight, noting what you've just said, and noting that this sample is very small, 39 case audits, and noting again, we're talking about till March 2026. 34% had good or outstanding supervision. Now, I'm new to this panel or committee. The background I'm from recognises it's either success or fail, and I recognise it's much more woolly here and much more indefined. What standard does it need to be for Ofsted in this area to be considered that that's not requires improvement generally and good? Because you're never going to keep everyone happy. Not everything's going to be perfect. No organisation is. But just ballpark, where does it need to be?
So, sorry, I suppose I can't give you a figure and say that I would say that 60% would be the figure we'd want to aim at. I would say that's around our own audit process and the outcomes that were given. It's also looking at the quality as well as the frequency. So it's those double aspects in terms of supervision that we deliver on cases. Supervision is an area of ongoing focus in terms of improvement through audit, training and review.
Thank you. Emma, did you want to come on that?
So just in terms of what we would be wanting to see in terms of getting to good or better. So just for clarity, we would want to shift that dial so proportionately over 50% of supervision plans were classed as good or outstanding, to reduce that there are no inadequates. The other element that is really important in terms of the audit process is when a case is found to be is audited and found to be requires improvement and or inadequate, is that there are a series of specific actions for the social worker and their manager to address in terms of making the response that the child receives to be good or better. So it's a multi-layered process, but the importance of the teams acting on those recommendations and the actions is also really, really key. So the key element is that you are achieving consistency, that there is an expected standard, that the majority of children are receiving, if not all children are receiving, in terms of that routine, that regular oversight, but also the consistency in the approach and the specificity of the actions, and that the actions are also time bound, but that equally there is also room, and Ofsted are keen to kind of see this, so there are some tensions in terms of what they're looking for, is also the ability for the practitioner and the manager to reflect, to explore different hypotheses in terms of, because there are a number of variables in terms of responding to families. It can't be a one size fits all in terms of the actual, kind of the tailoring of the plan. So we have got a programme of work, and I think we have Estelle on the call, who is our acting practice improvement service director. And part of her quality assurance role and team is working with Adam and the operational service in terms of getting that really good understanding that everybody knows what good looks like, and that we have that shared ethos from myself as director through to first line practitioners.
Sorry, one final thing, Chair, then I'll be quiet. I was just going to ask, thank you for that answer, which was really helpful and gave me the information I wanted. Is it possible that further reports could have that kind of information in it? Because I read this and read 39 and 41%, whatever the figures are, and thought that's miles off, but you've just explained that it isn't and the reasons why. But for me, as somebody coming from the outside, it's impossible for me to assess that with this information.
So we are implementing, and we have our first board, a Children's Services Improvement Board, as of next week, which lead member will also be sitting on in terms of that oversight. And we will be looking at the quantitative and the qualitative measures in relation to practice, and just making sure that the service plans that are in place are dynamically responding to the different needs within the different teams, because I think what we need to also reflect some of the things that impact on consistency are if there are higher sickness levels, if you have a different levels of experience within the team. So it's something we are constantly having to review. But coming to those reports will be more those boards will be more detailed analysis that will help us be, I am hoping, more incisive in terms of the specifics of what strategically how we're intervening, how we're supporting practitioners better. So yes, we will be able to pull in more qualifying information into future reports.
Thank you. Any other points? I just had one with I think I saw that those priorities are the ones from the post Ofsted improvement action plan, which I think we saw. I can't remember, it was maybe about a year or so ago in the meeting. I guess I was wondering how much does that improvement plan change? I mean, I assume there's updates on the action points. Are there sort of new action points added, or even new central areas of priority, and sort of how often is that being updated and things like that?
There will consistently be a focus on supervision, planning and recording, because those are the kind of the core elements of the role, and how we evidence change happening for children within that. So in addition to the core audits, which is the analysis that you have in this report, we also undertake thematic audits. So for example, we may look at the quality of pathway plans for 16 plus children and young people, or decision making in terms of thresholds around whether a child comes into care, and what have we learned in terms of the quality of the support that was put in place to seek to prevent that happening in terms of the support for the family. So there are, in addition to the core audits, there's a number of other kind of methodologies that we utilise to help us understand and get that clear line of sight through to what's happening in first line practice. because the key element for us as leaders and as corporate parents is to make sure that we have the right conditions in place to ensure that good practice can thrive within those first line practitioner roles, and that is a whole system working. So we need to do regular temperature checks in relation to how effective is that system working. So that whole quality assurance framework is mobilised to help us understand that.
Do you want to say something about practice week?
Yes.
Yes.
So twice a year, we have practice week happening. I think it's next week. Week after next. Yeah. Mixing up with my dates. Where there is a particular theme, and there are lots of presentations and discussions between leaders and practitioners around kind of particular themes of practice. So looking at direct work with children, looking at previously practice weeks have focused on neglect, working with older children. So there are, again, kind of particular focus in the week where, in the year, calendar year, where we are coming together as a service to review and to learn from first line practitioners in terms of what's working and what we need to change and do differently.
Can I just add, Emma, to the point you're making earlier about the DIP samples, or so data might suggest an area that we're interested in terms of looking at outliers or how we benchmark that against other local authorities. That might then get us to focus in doing a particular DIP sort of sample or audit in relation to that area to assure ourselves. So linking into that bit around how we're keeping that constant sort of live dynamic monitoring really of what our figures, what the data is suggesting as well.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Are there any other comments on that? Yes, I guess I know it's kind of been touched on. I mean, it suggests that there might be another further sort of not full inspection, I know, but sort of visits in the spring we're looking at. Based on this, do you feel generally confident at the moment that with that visit that they'll be saying that it's kind of on the right tracks as well? I mean, I know that's quite an open-ended question, but
record it.
But do you feel reasonably I know in the last visit you said they were quite positive about the improvements already being made.
They've certainly reflected positively on the changes that had been made between so what they found when they came to visit during the ILACs, and that was in their findings in March 23 to February of this year. So where they focused on children in need and child protection planning, it's likely we think that there is a strong likelihood that the focus would be because they will want to focus on children in another part of their journeys. So there's a strong likelihood that it will be children in care and care leavers, and we would welcome that objective viewpoint. I think that team in particular have been through some quite significant personnel change and churn since the ILACs. I think more recently they're in a more settled place, and I'm confident that we've got the right plans in place to support the service to be able to deliver on that improved support. We can already see a reduction in the numbers of children who are having changes in social worker and PAs, and previously that was higher than we wanted it to be. So that's a clear kind of, as we stabilise that service and we are working and they are understanding the standards and expectation and the pace of work that is expected for to improve outcomes for children and young people, then yes, I am confident that we will be able to demonstrate, put our best foot forward in terms of that delivery.
I think that stability mention is reflected in dashboard 7 on the performance indicators, where it looks at the reduction in agency workers and the reduction in turnover of permanent staff. So that will be is a net gain in terms of stability and permanence.
And that will help us drive through consistency. Consistency will help us in terms of that achievement of core planning for children. So yeah, what you want is that kind of virtuous circle, really, in terms of self-improvement, reflection, doing more, doing better.
Absolutely, thank you. And I guess my final thought with that. I know, as I said, I know last time we had the full sort of improvement kind of plan shared. I know this is obviously sort of an update with that. Is that, I say, is that document a kind of live one which was then updated? Because I seem to remember when it that one last came to the committee, it sort of had the updates of all the action points and what stage they were all at.
Related to the ILACs.
Yes, the ILACs.
Than the broader service improvement plan.
Yeah. Is that something that the updates of that might be able to come back to this?
We can certainly. So each service director has a service improvement plan, service delivery plan, and then what sits under that is each head of service also has for their particular area a plan in terms of areas of focus. Would you want to see the broader higher level one?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what
because they can get quite granular.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking. Can you remember the one that was? I'll maybe. Dig it out. I'll
it would be helpful.
Yeah,
we are working on our broader children's plan, and we've got a huge we've got a survey which we've got a really good response out. Over 1,600 children, young people have come back to the survey, and there's further engagement activities planned over the course of the next month, because one of the areas of particular feedback, and it's in the ILACs, is wanting to see that children and young people are influencing decision and policy making within the local authority. So that's kind of a piece of work, and we will update our broader plan in the new year as a result of that feedback.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on that? Right, thank you very much for those. I know there's some of the dashboard items. Was there any sort of key points that you wanted to pick out from those to highlight at all? And then if there's any questions, we can go through those.
I suppose the one point links into the improvement plan is the sustained improvement in the timeframes of assessments that was on there, and then that point really that we just reflected upon, which is the reduction. I think it's down from 27 or 26% down to 80% in terms of reliance on agency staff to cover key roles. And what that's shown in some of our other performance indicators aren't here is around reducing the. We measure the children that have had changes in social workers, and there's been a reduction in that as well, because that follows through in terms of that stability.
Thank you. Yes, Sarah.
Hi, thank you. Can I ask a question around the early health dashboard number 1? You've had a significant drop in the number of referrals, and I just wondered why there was such a significant drop. But at the same time, there seems to have been an increase in the length of time it's taken to get to assessment. So I was just interested why that one's gone up when the other one has dropped so significantly.
So we are re-looking at that, because there's been a change in the way that the data has been collated, and I think that's giving a false picture there in terms of that significant drop. So what I need to do, Sarah, is just go back and look at that, and then maybe return that to the board in terms of that specific question.
Thank you. So if we sort of go with each dashboard, just see if there's any questions. So are there any further sort of comments or questions on dashboard item number 1? Okay. Dashboard item number 2, the Children's Social Care Front Door. Any? Oh yeah, Jane.
Yeah, just a quick one. The percentage of referrals which are repeat referrals has dropped quite significantly. Are there any themes? Because that's good news, isn't it? Are there any themes behind that?
I would say it's a figure that probably needs to be looked back over the year with that longitudinal view in terms of it. We have seen that before where it's certain quarters it's reduced, but then it's come back up again. If you look at quarter 2, 23, 24, it was 18%, so it did go down then. You do sometimes see these trends that map out over the year, but when you look at the full year figure, it tends to steady around the 20-22%.
Okay, thank you. Any other things on dashboard 2? Dashboard 3, any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. Only, yeah, wondering why that's hit an all-time high across the data points.
Is that
Again,
the top table of child?
Yeah, sorry,
child protection plan?
the first line is that. Are there any key themes behind that?
I would say if you compare it again to quarter 2, it's gone up by 3 children, and we have had some large sibling groups. Particularly, I know of one large sibling group, and I would say that figure, I believe it was higher in 22-23 as well, higher than the 125. So it's something we look at in terms of the conversion rate from child protection inquiries and in cases that progress through to conference as well.
Sorry, I think more broadly, just in terms of children requiring support. So over the summer, we have seen an increase in the numbers of children reaching the threshold for statutory social work support. It's something that we are looking at more broadly in relation, but when you compare year on year, it's about a 10% increase of children who are have been referred in. Now, typically during the summer holidays, you would expect to see a decline. That hasn't happened this year, and I think reflecting on some of the wider structural stresses that families have been experiencing and some of the financial difficulties. Those are some of the themes that we are seeing in terms of families requiring additional support. We are doing the work and we will have our Helping Early strategy that will be concluded in spring of next year. And part of the engagement piece is really sort of having a look at our children's journeys. What could we have done differently? What's our collective universal offer in terms of early support for children? And I'm pleased to say that we are entering into a partnership with Camden in terms of looking at our early help work in terms of improvement in that space.
Thank you. Any other questions on dashboard item 4?
Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Just keep going through. It was less of a question. It was more of for me, the numbers are interesting, but the context is the more important thing. And I find when I go through this, there's a great statistical explanation of the numbers, but a sentence of context would be
Helpful.
Really helpful.
Yes.
Just what, like, not paragraphs of detail, because
kind of just what I've summarised.
Yeah, I don't want to create extra work, but I think it's really, when you go through it, it's really useful just to know what the context is.
Yeah.
For each of those, I'd say. Yeah.
I was just going to very quickly ask with that one as well. I know the percentage of children in care who've won more than one allocated social work in the 12-month period. I know that's sort of coming down a little bit from where it was. Are there any kind of national figures for what that generally looks like, or is that a bit of a hard one to sort of benchmark nationally?
There are national figures that we can benchmark because it's a tally that has only recently been introduced. So, but it's certainly something that going forward, the DfE will be producing figures because it is an indicator of the context in which your social work workforce are working and feeling supported. So it's an important one to watch for us, and we should be able to produce when the results come out nationally some benchmarking in terms of where we sit within that.
That would be great, thank you. So yeah, if we can have that on next time. Do you know approximately where we sit currently with it? Are we sort of above or nationally at the moment?
I wouldn't be able to.
No, that's fine. No.
But I would say that I wouldn't be able to say off the top of my head at this moment in time without seeing the other figures.
That's okay. Did you want to add something, Prue? No, sorry. Thank you for that. Oh, sorry, Charles.
No problem. It was a similar question, actually. I was interested, dashboard 7, 12 months rolling turnover of permanent qualified social workers, which has already been touched upon a bit. Now, that figure's jumping around all over the place, and I recognise the steps that are in the report about how to grow your own and steps that are being taken to increase retention. I was just interested, what is the figure nationally? Again, and noting what you said in the previous answer.
Well, there has been work done in terms of understanding the lifespan of social workers, which I understand a few years ago was on average about 8 years. So the DfE have engaged with local authorities, and there's been some significant work in terms of trying to understand the right context and the systems that support social workers to thrive and to continue working and gain that experience. You typically will see some variations in terms of outcomes of Ofsted gradings, so it's not unusual following an inadequate rating for social workers to not want to work for an authority that has experienced those challenges as a system. So there are some wider variations, and also when you work in areas, so typically say London or one could say the Berkshires, where there are a number of it's a highly competitive market, so people can within a short distance seek. So what part of our job is to make sure that we are an employer of choice, and we are remaining competitive, particularly in terms of how we look after our staff, how we nurture and support learning and development, and how effectively we offer supervision, containment, development opportunities. So that's been one of the areas of direction in terms of the development of an academy, to kind of, and I think that's where you can start to see that increasing commitment. And one of the things I think kind of the service should be most proud of, Adam and his team, is that there are some long-standing agency workers who have made the decision to commit on a permanent basis to apply for permanent roles. We've had a number of those workers, particularly in the last 6 to 8 months, which is really positive.
Thank you. Thank you. And are there any, if we just go back to sort of dashboard 5, are there any questions or comments on that? No, dashboard 6, the children missing from home and care. And then anything further on the item 7, the children's services workforce.
Just to add on that dashboard 7, so the modelling we're doing on that bottom table is showing ongoing and significant improvement as we move into next year. Of course, it will be important that we evidence that as we progress through that period, but I think that mix of what Emma was describing of that culture context that you're creating for workers in terms of where they want to be and work, and we're really seeing the fruits of that sort of in terms of reducing and reliance on locum workforce. And that's not a critique of locums, but it's about creating that stability and permanence of workforce.
Thank you. And yeah, I think I was just, it was a comment really, but I just thought the apprenticeship and scheme and things looks really positive. And I know I think some of the people came, again, it was about 6 months or 8 months to talk about it, and that sounded like a really positive program, and it sounds like it's going well. So yeah, that's great. My other small question really was that these kind of market supplement that was mentioned, you know, is great for recruiting and hopefully retaining people. Is this kind of a financially sustainable thing which is going to be ongoing, or is it, do we know it's time limited at all?
It's probably cheaper to do that than to pay agency staff. So yes, it is. Yeah.
So there's no plans to be changing that anytime soon?
I think it's a necessary thing at the moment. Yes, unlikely to stop being a necessary thing.
Great, thank you. Any other questions on those items?
I had a question.
Oh, sorry, Alison. Yeah.
I know we offer key worker housing. Is that influential, and are we offering enough of it to our social workers?
There isn't enough of it to offer enough. No. I don't know whether Adam wants to say anything about it.
Well, apart from that being a challenge, I think it is something we've sort of looked at about whether it would add to that whole portfolio of offer. I think it's interesting when we look at who our target audience is in terms of recruits as well, in terms of workers we're aiming to recruit or trying to recruit. I would say I think it's always, if it's available, it's, you know, always beneficial to have that offer. But I think the multi sort of channel approach that we've got in terms of apprentices, ASYEs, experienced workers, locum conversion is really sort of delivering at the moment in terms of that being a focus.
That's good. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Any others on that report? Thank you very much for all of those. Then, so I think just to sort of summarise some of it, I think we sort of talked about the benchmarking on the that's social within 12 months. Be good, and I will dig out the post offset improvement bit that I was looking at, and I'll be in touch about that. Excellent. So next is the executive member update.
Well, there's a few smallish things. One of them is, I think you will have heard reference during the meeting to service directors. Yeah. Yes. So this is a change that has been made. So there are no more assistant directors. There are service directors, and I don't know how far that has percolated through. It took a while to get in. Went through personnel board, had to be consulted on and informed. Everybody informed and made sure it was happy. But it seemed like it was introduced because it seems like a more accurate description of what people are. Because who are they the assistants to was a common question before. So we hope people get used to that new terminology. Second thing is that last week we took through the executive the all-age autism strategy and the Senate inclusion strategy, which have been here before. So those are now approved and they're going to the Health and Wellbeing Board, I think, at the next meeting, I think it is, which is shortly. Outside, before you go home, look at the photographs. The Care Leavers did a fantastic photographic exhibition, which put in place for Care Leavers Week. There's some really interesting photographs there, and tell you a lot about the people involved. And sadly, it's not the opening night, so you won't get cake. So, but please do have a look. I think they can be really proud of what they've done, and there's some really striking things in there. the other thing that I want to talk about is, was the National Audit Office report that came out about SEND. It's a very sobering read, but a very realistic report about the state of the system nationally, and the fact that they have put in writing, I mean, quoting them directly, it's not financially sustainable. And that, that is how it is. It shows that I think they've listened to local authorities, and there's a lot of local authorities have reported back through the county council's network. So this is authorities that are responsible for adults and children's social care. There's about 150 authorities in that block, and 74 of them, I think, responded to the survey. A quarter of authorities say they will go under if the ministerial override on the high needs block deficit goes, which is due to go in 2026, and I can't quite believe it will ever go. It didn't go in 2023, which is when it was originally due to go, because at that point, the entire deficit falls on the council. At the moment, the deficit sits in the dedicated schools grant block, and although the council's responsible for servicing it and trying to minimise it and all the rest of it, we don't have to say how we would pay for it in one lump. If that ministerial override goes, and it will then come onto the council's books, even though it's not in, it's a debt that we don't run up ourselves, it's run up by the education system locally, we will then become responsible for that entire amount. We won't fall over immediately because we're reasonably sustainable. There are a quarter of authorities will fall over immediately, and another quarter say they'll fall over within 3 years. I think maybe we will be in towards the end of that 3 years. We couldn't. We'd be inheriting a debt of, at the moment, £34.5 million, just transferred from one thing to the other. It will be higher by 2026, despite all our efforts, and we are the steepness of the rise is declining because of the work we're putting in, but it's still rising. And the council just can't accommodate that just like that, not least because of the impact on our revenue account. It's already having that effect because we have to pay the interest costs. So I'm finding it has depressed me somewhat more than I wanted, because I knew it was true, but to see it fully acknowledged and not to have the confidence that it will be responded to with sufficient urgency or with sufficient resource is worrying. Noises have been made, some money has been put into the system. It's not enough, and although I know authorities and members of Parliament have been calling for the deficit to be wiped off, that will not help in the long term, because unless the structure of the funding changes, the deficit will just build up again. So it is a very challenging situation at the moment, and there are a lot of good things that officers are doing in this authority and the schools as well. It's against that backdrop of a really difficult situation. So it's quite hard at the moment. There are lots of things I think we can be proud of. I'm grateful to all the staff. They're working really hard, doing a lot on the social care side, doing a lot, and we've got the education conference next week, and we're doing a lot of work building partnership, and I think that is we are doing better with our schools than we were before, but just outside there is a vast hole, and I don't know how anybody is going to be able to fill it without government intervention. So we'll just have to wait and see. It's not anything that people didn't know, as I say, but it's just written down in black and white in a very honest report now, and it's worth researching. It's not that long if you want to read it. It's really probably one of the strongest and most direct reports of this kind that I've ever seen. No. So sorry to be depressed, but it is depressing me.
Thank you. I was going to say, is it something you might be able to share a link around to that or something?
I'm sure we can. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think that'd be really useful. Thank you. Did anyone have any questions for Prue at all? Sarah. Sorry, Sarah first, then Catherine.
Well, I've got some questions, not about that. I think Prue knows what my questions are. Can I ask my questions? Right. They concern the new Spencer's Wood Primary School. Like, what's the timescale for building it? Now the planning application has gone in.
Right, this is complicated. So officers can leap in and rescue me if I go wrong here. We have the school place planning strategy document, which showed that in large parts of the borough, we've got a surplus of primary school places coming through from reception year 1, year 2, building up because the bulge has gone through into secondary and is now going out the end of secondary. And although we will eventually have house building to produce more from whatever, whether we get this local plan through or whether we have to then meet the new government's housing targets, that doesn't make up enough to counteract the lower birth rate. But Shinfield Parish, if I can quote that, and
Swallowfield.
Yes, and Swallowfield. So it's 3 mile cross Spencer, all the Spencer's Wood, particularly in this case, have got the house building, and they have got a shortage of primary school places. It's the one bit in the borough which is short. So the planning application's gone in, but it's complicated because this is where you'll correct me if I go wrong. It may be better. Well, we don't know whether to build a separate school or to have it as an annex of another school, effectively extend, like somebody else, a satellite. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. The site, the application's gone in, and it had to go in because of the planning system produced, which we had to put an application in to preserve the site. But it's been it's part of the 106 agreement. We don't know the fate of that planning application yet. So there's difficulties about the location with the exclusion zone around the AWE and those kind of things. So, and I can't prejudge, you wouldn't expect me to prejudge a planning application. So we know we have to do something, and the timeline given for decisions about the school is spring next year. So I would say about March time, we will have a much clearer idea of how those school places in Shinfield and Swallowfield and Spencer's Wood will be delivered. But they will be delivered by some mechanism because we know we've got a shortage. So I can't tell you exactly what it will look like, but it will happen. And that the strategy is a strategy. It's really outlining where we need to take action, and the action plan is dropping out of that. And that action that's specifically mentioned in the strategy is that we need to sort out sufficient primary school places in the Shinfield area. Is there anything else I need to say about it? No, I think that probably.
Well, I note, which I didn't know before, that the Coombs, which is one of the sort of fallback places. I mean, it's one of the nearest schools to the area, that's not doing very well at the moment. So
it's doing much better than it was. Right. At one stage, it was in a far worse state. It's recovering reasonably well. It's been put under. Is it Key? It's under an academy trust now, isn't it? So
it's with the Keys.
Keys. I thought it was the Keys.
Thank you, with Jane. The Keys. Prue,
yes. Yeah. And it is coming up, but those kind of things do cause problems. I mean, we've got other schools and that. So we've got Farley Hill in Arborfield, despite because it used to be in Farley Hill. For those of you who are acquainted with it, and we have parents trying to get their children in there, partly because it's a new school, but also because it's near the new housing. But then we have other parents saying you're overfilling this school, go away, you know, and sometimes you feel like you can't win. But it is difficult when the rest of the borough has got a surplus of places. So we will have enough places for those Shinfield children to go to, but we don't really want to be bussing them around the borough.
Yes, because the problem is that children leapfrog. Because, for instance, there's Lambs Lane School, but there's lots of children live around Lambs Lane, so they all go to it. Swallowfield children, who are the furthest away from any school, have to leapfrog Lambs Lane and go to further away schools like the Coombs. So, I mean, it's the catchment area. Well, it's more than the catchment area, isn't it? It's the proximity rule that screws everybody up, because you can't say, well, you know, we need to let those children go to that school because it's not too far away, and then those children will have to go, and everyone's moving around.
It's one of those unfortunate things that parental choice is a bit of an illusion. Particularly in primary, where there's an expectation that your primary school will be within walking distance of your home, and the statutory distance is 2 miles for most children. And our schools are not necessarily located where our housing is because of the housing development that's taken place. So we can fix some of that over time, but none of it is an immediate fix, because you have to build new provision, or you have to work it out. And we really don't want to be transporting children, not just because it costs us a lot of money, but because it's not very good for young children to be spending a lot of time travelling to school every day. Yeah, so yes, it's not easy, because we've also got simultaneously the planning process starting for what we do about the surplus places elsewhere in the borough, which is also going to be a knotty problem, which I'm sure this committee will be looking at before too long. It's a very careful dance not to disadvantage any one school over another. So they've all got to keep in step with each other, despite all the temptations that there might be to try and say, well, we'll stay with a 2-form school and that school can shut their provision or whatever. We don't really want that, because we think that if housing development is on the scale that we're thinking it might be, we don't want to take any decisions that mean that we'd have to start again from scratch if we needed more school places. It's much better just to find a way to use those buildings continuing and keep them in service so that we can put children in them when we need them, as opposed to saying, oh, no, we haven't got enough places. We really don't want to go around there if we can possibly avoid it. So that piece of work is ongoing now with schools, and hopefully in a cooperative manner. I think that they committed to that, and let's hope we will manage to stick to it when the going gets tough.
Thank you. Sarah, did you have a point that you want to raise?
My question went back to the audit. And I just want to say a thing I did read the report, and the thing it didn't do very well, I'm not suggesting that the finances are wrong, is it didn't really look at the fact we now go 0 to 25, whereas statements didn't, and the impact that that's had on the finances, because I don't think they really compared like with like, because that made a big difference. So I think when you read it, do actually think about the fact we've moved to 0 to 25 and statements went like that way.
No, that's a very good point, but it wasn't at all encouraging. I mean, it basically says the DfE doesn't know what it needs to provide or where it needs to provide it, which isn't terribly helpful. And it's not surprising in those circumstances that you get all sorts of issues. One of them being that our state special schools are filled to the brim, and the overflow is having to go into independent schools because they haven't got the right level of state provision.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Prue? Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for that update. We'll move on to the next item 29, which is the forward programme. So we've got on the forward programme for January, March going forward. Does anyone have any Comments on any of those? Anything that they feel could or should be added, or anything that we want to really see? Yes, Charles.
I was just going to say, Prue's just touched on this, but do you think basically the study of school facilities across the borough, which must be now in negotiating an international peace treaty, is going to appear in this time window?
I think we've got an item in March, haven't you, about
Yes.
school place planning? That might be the place to.
Yeah, I was going to say I suspect all of those issues will come up in that item in March, and presumably that will be for you'll have all the numbers for the following September. That would be when, yeah, okay, yes, that will come up in March. Any other things that would be raised with that? So the only the only questions I had slightly, I know we've got the unscheduled ones with the Berkshire West Safeguarding Children Partnership update from the Youth Council. Do we know when those might, a suitable time when those might be scheduled in, or whether those might be best later on? I don't know the sort of pattern of things like the Youth Council, how that works, whether there's a good time in the year where a suitable update.
Not near exam time. Would be my only thought.
Yes, that's a good point. Okay, well, maybe that's something that we can go away with and have a look at for next time. And I had where we've got sort of regular updates in the post Ofsted action plan. I know we've sort of had those kind of updates in that. Will those work best as kind of regular things as part of that education update, or would those is that the best way for those to work? Yeah, okay, that's fine. So I think those next two meetings there's lots of things and they will be quite busy, so I don't think that's fine.
Only so the unscheduled, are we hoping to get those in before the end of the year? Because if we're looking for youth council input and we want them in January, they need to be briefed quite soon, don't they? Because the Christmas holidays are coming up and then they won't have much time to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably a more realistic time frame is maybe the Berkshire West Safeguarding Partnership in January, and then the Youth Council update in March. I think probably just in terms of timing.
So should we agree that now, so they've got time to prepare?
Yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah, thank you for that. That'd be good. Thank you. Any other comments on those? Excellent. So next is onto the action tracker, which is after that. So if we just go through these actions. So the first one, which is the holiday activities and food programme. Has this been? I'm not sure this has been emailed out there. Do we know if this has been provided? My question sort of was, is this still happening? Because I know there's some questions about the continuity of this programme.
No, I think he means if the HAF is continuing.
Yes,
which it is.
It is, yes. Yes, so I mean, I think it would. I mean, I think when it was presented last, I think that was really useful and informative. So I wonder whether, again, that might be something which an update could be presented with that. Do you know it? I think, yeah, I think that.
So when?
My recollection of this is that we had HAF activities in the summer holidays, and it was that the committee was looking for a report on what happened in the summer holidays.
We can get that.
And we could, yeah.
We've recently had a report, haven't we, come through DLT, so we could have one ready for January.
Thank you. And then the next one, safety valve update. So I think that's been completed with the things we've had to date. So that's really good. We can, yeah. And then we talked about having that as a kind of dashboard item or something. I think that would be useful there. Then KPI, we talked about that at the training, I think, didn't we? And I think everyone at the training, I think those sort of
Speed
dials. I was trying to think of the word for it. Yeah, the speed dial. I think everyone sort of found those useful. So, and will those be incorporated in the sort of next
They will.
updates? Yeah,
yes.
that'd be really great. So, thank you. And then complaints reports. So, will they be able to be included in the update? I don't think we had those this time. Will those be able to be added in?
So there is a complaints report that goes to management overview and scrutiny, of which children's and is incorporated.
Okay.
But we could bring the children's elements here for that may be something that we could incorporate into the education and the social care updates.
Yeah.
For next time.
I think
if we tuck it into those reports in terms of that overview and learning the amounts, so that they can be seen in conjunction with the overall KPIs. Would that be helpful?
I think that would be helpful, yeah, to see that the broad picture.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that'd be useful. And then the next ones from the other ones, the explanation of acronyms. So that was had those in the training, which was good, with many slides with the acronyms. But no, I think that's helpful, and I know it's on the report. So I just have those slides been forwarded around from the training. I'm not sure they have.
We'll make sure that
if they can, then I think if those can be forwarded around, that'd be great. And then we'll have all those acronyms to hand. And then the school planning strategy, those have been marked as completed from last time. And then the key performance indicators, I think that's similar to what we talked about before, and I think those are sort of completed for next time, including the bit on tribunals, and yeah. Then, so yes, and then Send Youth Forum. I think you mentioned it just before the meeting, but did you just want to just briefly update on the meeting you had?
Yeah, so we're pleased to say that our Send Youth Forum attended our Send Partnership Strategic Board this afternoon, and Ming and I had the pleasure of their company, so we took them for a pizza to say thank you following before this committee, so that was very nice to spend a bit of time getting some further feedback and insight into the things that we do well and things that we could do better as a system. So very helpful.
Excellent, thank you. And so yeah, I think those things have all in place. The only small question I had about that, I know from the last meeting, I think the specific points they raised were in relation to the kind of accessibility of documents, the training application forms. Were those things that they raised today as well?
Yes, so those are, we wanted our partnership to hear, because there's a certain power when it comes from them in terms of their experiences, and I think that certainly was the feeling, I think, that people were noticing, and I'm pleased to say that some of the videos that they've made around particularly accessing health services, the NHS England lead was in the partnership board for the South East this afternoon, and she's making sure that they're going to be, with their permission, disseminated across the whole of the South East in terms of supporting learning. So that was really positive. And they're also have assured us and want to continue to feedback and help us tailor our support and have conversations more broadly, including having an offer of one of them to come and play the bagpipes for us if we would like. So yeah, so So, but yes, but there was we are feeding back more broadly because there was information for colleges about application, but also applying for a bus pass and things like that. So communicating more widely as a system in terms of some of that feedback.
Great, thank you. That sounds really positive. So yeah, so all those actions have been completed with that, and then the final one was the home to school transport policy review, and I think that's in the January meeting, I think, is it? Yeah, so that's fine. Are there anything that people wanted to add? Anything that they think have been missed off that at all?
We were sent a list of different activities and things that we could go and visit. Was that in this council year, or was that?
That's corporate parenting order.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Ignore me. I was checking we all had it, but we don't all need it. Yeah. So.
Thank you. Any other comments on action tracker? Go on with that. Excellent. So we move on to now agenda item 31. So this is the exclusion of the public under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972. The public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3